Kia ora, and welcome to The Niggly, a niche cast on the Diggity Doodah Darkness Peptoid Panther, Mr. Slippers, here in Level 3 of the Pando in Aotearoa, here for another episode of The Niggly Niche Cast with the Wobbly Wildcard. And yeah, we're just here to chat our way through various sporting matters, Mr. Wobbly Wildcard. What's crack-a-lackin'?
Oh, mate, not too much. It's the old, I gotta be honest, I haven't noticed the difference between level 3 and level 4 yet. I haven't had occasion to go down the road. I wasn't one of those people lining up outside Macca's at 12:00 on Tuesday morning, so yeah, deliberately so. I couldn't imagine any place I would least prefer to be than there, but I mean, each to their own. It's nice to have things for people to look forward to, so I can understand it on that line, but definitely nah.
I'm definitely partial to a bit of fast food, but I'm always the type of guy, if I have a bit of common sense and understand that you don't need to be fiending for McDonald's. That's a bit weird, but it's also just the wait for a drive-through. If I drive past a drive-through and I'm in that mode where I'm just sniffing around for a burger or some shit, usually because I'm high, I always just go past the drive-through that's packed. I'm not going to sit in my car and just wait for anything over 20 minutes. That's disgusting. Sharpen up, fix up, look sharp. What are you doing sitting in a drive-through? Obviously, people have a lot of time. That's a variable in this matter, but I'm not going to say fast food's overrated because that would be hypocritical of me. I'm definitely trying to vision a future with less fast food in my belly, but the waiting a long time in drive-through is easily one of the most overrated things in existence.
The sacrifices to get the fast food probably outweigh. I mean, it's a novelty at that point, so I can understand it. But I mean, if you're gonna there's probably people who are gonna keep doing that each day. So, yeah, ouch. I'm also one of those people who if I got to go to the shops or something like that, I'm gonna be okay, I'm gonna wait till I don't know, I gotta go pick up something from just the warehouse or something. Okay, when am I going to go? Well, I'll tell you when I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go on Saturday morning. I'm not going to go on late nights or anything like that. Probably going to wait till benefits of the old self-employment situation. The whatever the opposite of a benefit is. The opposite of the benefit is that I only have the money to go shopping cheaply at the warehouse or Kmart or whatever, but hey, fair play. There's a lot on offer at those places. The benefit though is that I get to go while everyone else is at work, so I'll be well, maybe let's go 10 a.m. on a Thursday or something like that. Nobody's going to be around, in and out, won't have to fight for car parking, that kind of thing. Those are the kind of things I think of normally. So, just me personally, there's really nowhere I'd least prefer to be than in a drive-through waiting. I mean, I don't even like McDonald's anyway. I'm a little partial to the fries. I'll admit that much. If someone else is partaking, I don't mind sneaking over and grabbing a couple of those little bad boys. But the actual greasy fatty burgers and stuff, they're disastrous. But yeah, sitting in a drive-through, Jesus Christ. I don't like sitting in the drive-throughs in any sense of the word. I would be one of those people who would just park and go up to the main counter, rather than sit in the drive-through anyway. It just seems like it's not as convenient as it looks. But that is just me, and I'm a weird person, so point taken against myself.
There is great joy to be had in a hard and fast drive-through. Just rolling through the drive-through, order done, boom, boom, boom. Got a burger, chow down the burger. I'm a very efficient driving eater, so I just smash my food while I'm driving. That's part of the experience for me. So
yeah, see, I'm not. I spill it everywhere.
Oh, so. I definitely spill shit, but that's just part of the fun. And I'm definitely you'll definitely catch me at my local Pack and Save in the local Kmart when I need a fucking pair of sweatpants or a t-shirt or a hoodie. Definitely catch me at the supermarket and at Kmart at 9:30 on a weekday morning. That's the best time to go. There's no there's nothing more infuriating than having to like go to like a Rebel Sport on a Saturday morning, and it's just like you can't get a park. It's just just definitely a weekday morning activity, not activity, more like a errand doer, and enjoy that a great deal. We have some people listening may know that we have dropped a pretty much like an email newsletter. The word newsletter is a bit weird. Don't really know what a newsletter is, but it's an email thing that goes straight from us to your email with a couple of goodies. So we've been doing it for almost like 3 editions now, and had a few little. So you sign up to that. There'll be links all over our social media channels and whatnot. We've had a few. I enjoy it just as a place to write about different things that don't necessarily form like a typical thingy that we would write about. Like, I can't do a whole thing writing about a Matt Duffy podcast. I can't do a whole thing writing about an interview with Israel Adesanya. Those are the things that I've done in the last 2 email newsletters. But it's like a good way just to share what's caught our attention, what we've been thinking about, what we've been working on as well, and any other bits and pieces. Like, it's kind of like a cutting room floor, like everything that goes on the cutting room floor. It's not everything, but some things we pick up, and then that goes to the newsletter. Does that feel like an adequate description? Like when we're in our niche cage zone, and then we're dealing in what we need to publish and information to help us publish and various things that inform us on those matters, and then certain things just fall to the cutting room floor, but they've been digested and they've been consumed. Using that stuff for the newsletter has been quite fun, and like especially just sharing the insights. The Matt Duffy thing I wrote, it was hard to put into words other than just quoting Matt Duffy. For those who don't know, Matt Duffy played for the Melbourne Storm, then came back to Aotearoa, and he's playing rugby with North Harbour and Auckland Blues. And I wrote in the latest newsletter how Matt Duffy explaining the differences between league and union, and I was buzzing out. I was buzzing out for a while about how Matt Duffy described it. So it's like, what he was saying was in one of the things is that in league you're always running at the same setup. Like if you're Matt Duffy and you've got the ball, he was a winger, and he plays fullback wing in rugby union. Whenever he gets the ball, he's tending to run into the same setup. So it's like winger, centre, edge forward, half, front rowers, and you barely even need to look up to see like what's in front of you, because the structure is the same every single time. Whereas in rugby union, when he gets the ball and he's running it back into the defensive line, because there is less structure in rugby union, but there is more structure depending on how you look at it. But players with different numbers on their jerseys can literally appear anywhere in that defensive line. So Matt Duffy was saying that if there's a prop on the wing, but you don't run at him because you haven't looked and you haven't checked the defensive line, that's a missed opportunity. But in league, you know how everything's structured, so you just assume that everything's going to be the same and you just have to run the ball, make your meters. Whereas in rugby union, because the defensive line can appear in different ways, you've got to assess, like, there's a prop, I'm going to try get one-on-one with him. As opposed to, oh shit, I haven't looked, and now there's just like 2 second rowers and a number 12 in front of me, and I can't deal with them at all. So it's a couple of little insights there. How have you reflected on a couple of those early email newsletters? What's tickled your toes?
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of what we've started there. I think the email thing is coming along very nicely, and it's it's great for ideas where, like, I wrote, one of the ones I did was going into some of Stephen Fleming's best away performances and looking a little bit more into some of his numbers specifically, which was, just like bleeding on stuff that I didn't have time to get into in the home and away comparison stat thing I did for Black Caps guys, like a few days earlier. So just like a natural follow on from that stuff. I did stuff I wanted to go into, didn't have the time, wasn't going to be like a full on article. And then the same thing where like I was writing about, the next one I was writing about the Spark Sport thing with the cricket, which we'll talk about a fair bit later on. So like I was looking into that and I was thinking the question I've been thinking the whole time, which is about who's going to end up on the commentary box. So I remembered I'd done the old power rankings like 2 years ago for the Sky team, reshared that at the time as I was doing this, and then thought, you know what, I might update this. It would be a little bit unfair if I let the Sky Summers of cricket just die without giving them a little bit of a send off. So I did like the updated version of that. Few changes too. New number one. I don't think anyone would argue that Ian Smith has significantly boosted his stocks over the last 12 months, or 24 months since that original ranking thing. So, a worthy number one, and especially at the end of the Sky tenure and the end of what might be his home cricket commentary tenure himself as well. So, don't really know where that's going to go. But that was something I enjoyed writing, breezed out. Didn't really want to rehash a whole article doing that kind of thing because it had been done. But the email newsletter then gives a perfect little opportunity to do that. And plus, on top of that, like, as well as getting these funky little excellent sort of half article bits from each of us as well. Each one, like each of us is doing a new one each one, and it's sort of like one at the start of the week, one at the end of the week. So there's plenty of it. We're also, it's just also a very nice place to go and get the kind of like collated links from the last week or so and all the stuff which maybe you missed on Facebook or Twitter or whatever with the old shares. So, yeah, it's a good little beast that we're, I was going to say brewing, but you don't brew beasts. I'm mixing my metaphors there. Rearing? A good little beast that we're rearing there? I think that works.
Works enough for me. You gave Ian Smith that number one honour, and then he won some award with the New Zealand Cricket Awards, so maybe a bit of a connection there.
My influence spreads far and wide, yes.
We were talking about the coverage of cricket because, of course, Spark Sport unleashed their cricket coverage with the Black Caps. Obviously, Spark Sport signing up with New Zealand Cricket for the rights to play or to broadcast the Black Caps cricket in New Zealand from the home fixtures. So while we're talking about that, I found a lot of interest and intrigue in the fact that Spark Sport have the broadcast rights for games in New Zealand, but Sky Sports still hold on to the broadcast rights for games outside of New Zealand. So that sparked a couple of different thoughts in my head. The first one being, so it's not quite like, when I was thinking about Spark Sport taking over the broadcasting, I thought it was like a takeover. I thought it was Spark Sport they're just a home for Black Caps cricket, and that's cool. But then I started to think about it more with that knowledge that Sky Sport is still going to hold on to the broadcasting rights in New Zealand. And then it became a matter of forecasting some of those thoughts about how things may look. And you start to think like, well, all the major tournaments overseas, I assume will be broadcast by Sky Sports. So Sky Sports still has the big tournaments that, I think in New Zealand are really important because we've seen a couple times now how the country supports the Black Caps in those major tournaments. So from a Spark versus Sky battle perspective, the fact that Sky is likely, I assume, to have the major tournaments, World Cups, Champions Trophies, and so on and so forth, that's still pretty good for Sky Sport because like they're still going to be the place to go to watch cricket overseas, especially in the major tournaments. They get a lot of views and a lot of they seem to rally the attention of casual Kiwi sports fans. So they can, like if you're a casual Kiwi sports fan, you just hold on to your Sky subscription and you're still going to have plenty of Black Caps cricket. And then it comes into, okay, so the home, I haven't looked at any like future calendars and stuff like that. I don't know how summer schedules are going to look moving forward, but we've just come from a period where nearly exclusively all the cricket in Aotearoa has been ODI and T20. We've only had like two test series at the start and the end, so you're not missing out on much test cricket. And depending on the schedule, like you're still going to get Black Caps test cricket overseas at the time of the test championship, or at a time when the test championship would have been sparking into overdrive and stuff like that. So it's not like if you're a cricket fan in Aotearoa, you don't necessarily like need to instantly go and get Spark Sport. Like it might just be a case of, obviously, if you're capable, you can find illegal means to watch those games, but you can also just have one person in your friend group have Spark Sport and just like make a Black Caps T20 watching party. Like anytime the Black Caps watch a T20, you can just do it that way. Like if you don't want to, because you can still get like, I guess I'm interested in the weight of overseas Black Caps cricket and home Black Caps cricket. Just wondering like what is the amount of cricket played, the quality of the cricket, and those sorts of things, especially because we're coming from a situation where we've been saturated with T20 cricket. So are people still going to be invested enough in T20 cricket, like Black Caps T20 series, that they're going to want to sign up with Spark Sport just to watch those games? Like it's an interesting balancing act here, and just pondering how those things might look moving forward.
It is, and there's another factor to that as well, which is that the games that are being played in New Zealand, the stuff that's all on Spark, you also probably at least once or twice a summer are going to have the option to be able to go to those games and watch them live instead as well, which is something obviously not really an option when it's overseas unless you want to make a big old tour of it. So like the other funny thing about it is like it's just strange timing, and like I want to say it's good timing in some aspects, it's bad timing in other aspects, it's just weird timing all around for reasons that like nobody can control. But like late last week, the baton was officially passed across. Sky Sports reign of domestic and home-based international cricket is no longer Spark, are officially the home broadcasters now, but like obviously that's because it comes at the end of the summer. It also happens to come in the middle of this big old pandemic thing, which like shakes up. We don't even know what's going to happen down the line with tours and what's going to which ones will actually take place. At the moment, the 2020 World Cup is still expected to go ahead. Like they're still going through all the planning things. That's October in Australia, so you know there's reason to think that it's possible they'll be able to hold that and everything as well. But in what form? Like, will there be fans? Is unlikely, probably. So we don't exactly know how that's going to go. Which means that Spark get to do this big old like sort of what would you call it? Like unveiling or whatever, at a time when they're already offering like free monthly subscriptions at the moment, like for the next month, because of the fact that there's no actual live sport going on. So that's probably like a convenient thing for them and getting people in just to have a little taster and have a look-see, but it also means they don't have, like, I don't know if you've been through the Spark website and looked at what they've actually got to offer. There's nothing particularly interesting there. Like, they've gone out of their way to try produce some stuff. Like, they've done little one-on-one interviews with players. They've got players doing, like, their dream team things. They've got some, like, fresh interviews, sort of putting some context around a few sort of classic match highlights that they got there. But this is literally the kind of stuff that you're seeing on YouTube from all sorts of other people. Like, it's, sports teams all over the world are trying to come up with these kind of things at the moment. So while this might have been like a cute little addition a couple months ago, it's kind of like what everyone's doing right now. So it's interesting, sure, and like it's fun to have a look and see what some of the Black Caps and little quiz bits as well, I think, that they've done. Like it's fun to have a look and see some of these things, but at the same time, like it's nothing revolutionary, which is, I don't know if Spark are trying to be revolutionary or not, and I think that's probably a line to keep an eye on for like over the next 12 months, is because they're not going to emerge fully formed. Like there's going to be some teething things. There's going to be a bit of like, even just like, the obvious thing people would talk about there is how the actual broadcasts are going to go. Are they going to be like streaming issues? But it goes deeper than that. Like they're also going to be working with a new production company. They got to produce the stuff themselves, which like the production is outsourced. They'll get a company to do that. They're supposedly going through like taking, I don't know, applications or whatever, however that process works at the moment. They got to put together a commentary team. That commentary team might not gel immediately. They might not have this like straight off the bat kind of I don't know, camaraderie or just the like little pitter patter back and forth that the Sky team has had for a while, because they've had a few like ongoing guys who have been there for several years. Most notably Ian Smith, of course, who's been there for a couple decades doing that, and like sort of kingpinning it all together, which is not something they will have the luxury of doing for Spark. So whether they want to like really shake things up and go out of the box with some of these things, or whether they think that would like it's already a lot to ask cricket fans to change lifetime habits of like lifetime viewing habits, and then say like, well, we've done enough revolutionary stuff, we're going to try give them what they expect for everything else and just sort of play it by the books. That's kind of a funny balance, which we don't really know which way they'll go with yet. I sort of lean towards, I think they're going to do the latter. I don't think they're going to do too many like interesting, unexpected things. So, but you know, we got to wait and see how that goes. The way the actual like schedule goes, though, this is the other weird bit about the timing, is that like the next time. So think about, like, I'll frame this a little deeper as well. Like when, back in October, when it was first announced that Spark was going to take over the cricket rights, this was just before the home summer. So that was announced. Everyone knew that. People got to react to that. We got to read a bunch of think pieces about it and hear people yapping away on talk radio or whatever. And then we settled back into what has been the normal habits of watching the Black Caps on Sky TV for the rest of the summer. So it was like, it was a real thing, but then it became an abstract thing, and now it becomes a real thing, but it's also kind of an abstract thing again, because the next time we see the Black Caps, it was supposed to be when they go play some 2020s and ODIs, I think, against, like, they were going to play like Ireland and Scotland on a little mini tour. I don't know if it's been cancelled, but if it hasn't been cancelled, it will be cancelled. Like, they're not going to do that. Then the next thing up is a tour of Bangladesh in August. Presumably, that's going to be one of those ones which falls upon, like, so Spark aren't going to be broadcasting that. It's an overseas tour, which means that whoever the Bangladeshi host broadcasters are will be the ones producing that. Maybe it'll go through the ICC. I don't actually have any clue how this works, but Sky Sport have since like re-upped with the ICC for at least the next 3 years. So all the ICC tournaments are going to be on Sky, which includes then the next thing. If that Bangladesh tour doesn't go ahead, then the next thing is probably the 2020 World Cup in Australia, which is going to be on Sky. Sky have also, for the next 6 years, I think, all the Australian coverage. So any, like, Aussie... So, Sky are pretty chummy with Fox Sports these days, who now have the Aussie stuff, so that's never in doubt. And then they have had... I don't know what the state of the rights are, but they have had the English stuff as well. So we've seen the odd county game, like 2020 finals and stuff like that. But England home series as well, we get those kind of things. So, like, that's all... And the other aspect of all that is those home broadcasters aren't, like, sort of upstart Spark types. They're all, like, companies in Sky's exact position. So I just sort of... I suspect maybe there might be a little bit of a... If there's not a kind of solidarity between the TV guys in that matter... there will definitely be a kind of, like, Sky have these long existing relationships with those broadcasters, so it's going to be easier for them to renegotiate on all those. But yeah, so, like, there were going to be some, like, I think West Indies were going to play a couple 2020s here before and Pakistan as well, before the 2020 World Cup, just in preparation. I suspect that won't happen. Certainly not if they're going to have to be going to like quarantine when they get to Australia. There just won't be time. So it's very likely we won't actually see anything on Spark Cricket until November, which is like at least 6 months away, half a year away, and who knows what the hell the world's going to be like in half a year. So, I mean, who could have predicted half a year ago that we would be in the situation we're in now? So, it's just a lot of like like good, bad, indifferent, whatever. It's just a lot of like funny little timings with this whole thing and the way it all balances out, and the fact that Spark Sport, big unveiling, big old whatever you'd want to call it, announcement of themselves on the scene like this, and they're actually not going to get to flex their muscles for ages, like for probably quite a long time, by which case we will have seen more cricket on Sky, most likely.
I was approaching a point where I was going to have to sign up to Spark Sport because they have the rights to the Black Sticks hockey. So the Black Sticks play in the Pro League, and they were about to go overseas to play their European League. So I was going to try and tune into those games, which I believe are on Spark Sport. And then obviously you get the cricket as well. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. But now there's no hockey, there's no like international hockey for the foreseeable future. And as you've just laid out, there's a very complex, convoluted cricket landscape. So it's like, well, why would you sign up now if you're not going to get anything of great value like for X amount of time? Like, it just seems foolish to sign up now just to get some, like, it's a weird thing, because we have talked a lot about the New Zealand cricket's kind of complete neglect of like common sense with how they promote cricket. Obviously they're huge, they're going to promote T20s, they're going to promote ODIs and even Test cricket, but we've documented for a long time how they play and miss with broadcasting and marketing domestic cricket and women's cricket and stuff like that. A lot of the things that Spark Sport were offering as part of their like unveiling package was shit that like Cricket Australia, Cricket England, Cricket South Africa, Pakistan cricket, Sri Lanka cricket, they have all that stuff on YouTube, on their own YouTube, that gets their own views, that can then be monetized and used as a revenue stream for having good YouTube content. New Zealand cricket completely neglect that. I'll do a quick check just to check out their, I think they got busy with the awards show, which is cute for them, just to broadcast a few Pando little video chats that's capturing the world. But there was like, they started out doing like highlights for the domestic cricket, but that stopped after a round. There's the odd press conference, like, it's so sporadic. Like, they've got like highlight for one Super Smash catch. That's it. Susie Bates takes an amazing catch and they put the highlight on their YouTube, but there's no other Super Smash highlights. There's no other, like, there's nothing. There's very little interviews, and it's just random shit. But they're leaving that up to Spark to deliver online. And that's the weird thing. Like, now it's weird because Spark are a digital platform. So anything that New Zealand cricket do on their YouTube will be essentially competing against what Spark do, because they're both digital platforms competing for views and eyeballs. So it's a weird old conundrum that is taking place. And like, thinking back to one of the email, I think it was the first email newsletter I wrote, and we talked about it with the Warriors and the Phoenix, how the Pando has created a interesting juncture for those teams and how they assess what is left of their competitions this year, and how, like, even we talked about The Last Dance, which I have started to watch Wildcard, how the Pando created a perfect storm for The Last Dance. And obviously that is evident in all sorts of walks of life, just little, what's the word, synchronicities and timing and serendipity and all that stuff. That's essentially what you described with Spark Sport. Like, if you're Spark Sport and you're by all accounts, they invested a lot of money into this deal with New Zealand Cricket, because when it happened, everyone was saying that like Sky Sport just couldn't compete with the money on offer from Spark Sport, which now you're wondering like how much money did Spark Sport invest for like half the cricket content that the Black Caps and White Ferns are involved in, which is weird. But if you're Spark Sport, you've just invested all this money, like they would be paying for the rights to broadcast the Pro League. As with any, like, obviously all sorts of broadcasters are going through that right now, but I have a feeling like for Spark it's a bit more volatile than like if you're Sky Sport and you obviously pay for the rights to host the NRL broadcasting in Aotearoa, yeah, you're going to be losing money, but it's kind of across the board and you're an established broadcasting platform. Sky Sport, Spark Sport, they need you to subscribe to maintain some level of solidarity, and I'm sure they have to make enough profits and have enough subscriber numbers for their shareholders or stakeholders and report back to them. So if you're Spark Sport and you're looking to, like they existed for the Rugby World Cup, but then this is quite clearly them trying to take another move, make another move forward, make a big jump and really go at the sports broadcasting landscape, and then all of this shit happens, which is obviously working against that strategy. And now they, like, I just assume that all these people that would have signed up to Spark Sport nowish obviously are not going to do so, and I don't even know if like anyone's actually thinking about Spark Sport.
Hence why they're offering like free trial packages and stuff at the moment, which, I mean, is a good idea, and hopefully for their sake it does something, like gets a few more people in the door, but like they have to, because no one else is going to sign up to get nothing otherwise. I mean, I'm already on Spark Sport because of Premier League stuff. Gone back, you know, started, was it this Premier League season? It must have been yeah, so they've got the Premier League, so that was already like non-negotiable for me. So like this all just feeds into that nicely enough. But then when you look around the other stuff, obviously none of the sport is actually happening right now. They've got hockey, they've got a little bit of NBA and NFL stuff, nothing that you couldn't otherwise see on Sky already, to be honest, like in terms of the quality of games. The ESPN still, like, that's the weird thing about NBA as well, is they've got multiple like broadcast partners and stuff where they kind of like, you get a game, now you get a game, but and it's all competing as well with the NBA TV subscriptions too, which a lot of people in New Zealand have already, you know, relatively popular, because that's just been one of those online platforms which has laid it down for a while longer. For a while there, we used to get the NFL League Pass, whatever they call it there. We used to get that for free in New Zealand just because there wasn't a proper like broadcaster otherwise doing all the games. Like we only got what was on ESPN, and then they stopped doing that. I think it might have been when old Summit Sports came onto the scene, and that one sure fell away quickly. So I mean that's the case study that Spark want to be avoiding, I suppose. But like look around the scene of what Spark actually has, and there are things like that. Like the Premier League is going to bring in a certain amount of people. I don't think NFL, NBA, I don't think they have enough of those to bring in people, but it's good for a lot of Premier League fans like myself who are going to be interested in American sports as well. Same with hockey. Like there's going to be a good enough crossover there that's offering something else to people who are already on for other reasons. The big one for them was the Rugby World Cup, but all the other rugby is on Sky. And the Rugby World Cup is not on currently, right? It's once every 4 years. I don't know if they have the next one. I assume they negotiate it tournament by tournament. So, like, that's just, like, they're not holding anyone because of that. They would have got people who signed up for a month to watch the rugby and then gave up. Like, that's not an ongoing thing. So they needed something else. Like, they needed a big marquee thing, and cricket is that. Like, and I think that has to be part of this as well. It's not just them trying to do something for the good of cricket. It's also them doing something that's, like, desperately needed for their company. If it's going to survive, they need something like that. So I don't doubt they're going to go all in. I don't doubt they would have thrown all the dollars they could possibly spare at it because they had to, or else this whole thing is just a non-starter. So how that affects what they do from here on in will be rather interesting. It goes without saying. I guess people surely already realize this, but when we talk about like Black Cap stuff, that also equally means White Fern stuff. All that's on Spark as well. All the home stuff is on Spark. Away stuff will be on Sky if indeed Sky decides to broadcast it. Exactly the same situations. Away stuff will be negotiated with those broadcasters, I think often on a tour-by-tour basis outside of the big ones of England and Australia, which Sky already have existing deals with ICC as well. Again, I don't know exactly what the case is with the England stuff. I know they've re-signed for 6 more years with Australia Cricket, which is exactly the same amount of time as Spark has the New Zealand domestic cricket for, so maybe that was a bit of a one-fingered salute in their direction. They also, I'm pretty sure it was the day after Spark announced that they got the domestic cricket, Sky announced that they'd got the next, I think it was 3 years of ICC tournaments and ICC broadcast stuff. So, there's that too. They probably negotiated that a month before, but knew they were losing this, so decided to wait to give some people some good news after the bad news, just to cushion the blow a little bit, I suppose. I think that's more a PR move than anything else. But and domestic cricket as well is exactly the same package as what Sky already had. So it's the final of the Ford Trophy, all the Super Smash, men's and women's, and I think that's probably it. Plunket Shield just didn't seem to be involved in any of the mentions on the press conferences or all that. So I suppose if New Zealand Cricket wanted to be innovative buggers about it, they could certainly do something with that themselves separately. They've already got the Pooch Cam stuff. I don't see how hard it is to turn that into a live stream ongoing. You don't even need commentary, just a little scoreboard along with it. Just check in live with the Pooch Cam, whatever. But maybe this isn't the year to be expecting them from there. They should have been doing this way back when, but maybe 2020 is not the time to be expecting those kind of things of them. I don't know. The other aspect to throw into this whole thing, and it's another one of those little timing synchronicity type situations, and I think it feeds in well with the commentary idea as well, which is that, of course, simultaneously of the cricket rights moving off Sky and onto Spark, we've also had New Zealand Cricket not coming to a agreement with Radio Sport over those over the radio cricket rights as well. Radio Sport currently doesn't exist. I'm pretty confident it'll turn back up again when things settle down and they can bring back advertisers and all that. It's just kind of one of those it's just a bit of a volcanic time in that industry right now. So I might wait and see how that goes. And I wouldn't even rule out the fact that Radio Sport could come back with a bigger offer, because the reason they fell apart was they had, because they were the existing ones, I think they had a exclusive negotiating period where New Zealand Cricket could only talk to Radio Sport, so that's Radio Network, isn't it? Could only talk to them, and then they couldn't come to a new agreement. They weren't going to offer enough money over the years that they wanted, Radio Sport weren't, and so New Zealand Cricket said, well, we'll give you a 2-year deal or something, and they said, nah, that's not good enough. Just back and forth negotiations kind of thing. So as of just the other day when they announced the Spark thing, someone had asked, they must have done a press conference or something, someone asked David White about the radio stuff, and he said, look, we're still in negotiations with a couple other parties. We're confident cricket will be broadcast on the radio in some form somehow, which is important. It's another valuable, especially because of the blow of people who are not particularly interested in the streaming option. People probably of a certain generation would have preferred to revert to cricket on the radio as a sort of comforting, known better the devil you know than the devil you don't kind of thing. That's not currently an option. According to that press conference, it will be sooner rather than later, but we don't know exactly how that's going to work. But I mean, it also suggests that, like, if like with radio sport not only losing the cricket rights but losing its own life currently, being put on, I don't know, one of those cryogenic chamber thingies for the next while, like a better metaphor, old Han Solo at the end of the Star Wars one where they chucked him in the stone and locked him up in the whatever you call it. Like with that whole situation, I mean, if Spark Sport wanted to make a big old splash and offer Brian Waddle a bunch of money to get an establishment cricket voice on their coverage, they probably could. Wadd's will be in his 70s now, so maybe he wouldn't be interested in doing anything new. He might just be happy to, like, run to the sunset. Who knows? Jerry Coney as well is in that same boat. And if they want, like, that, I suspect they're probably going to be one of those ones who prefer to get the big names rather than the, especially early on in their tenure, rather than, like, the classy broadcasters. But if they want classy broadcasters, there's, at least 3 or 4 guys that are currently without a job with radio sport disappearing, who would be outstanding on TV, like making that sort of leap up onto that kind of, like that style of broadcasting. Your Aldersons and your Yoldens and your McCartys and Pete McGlashan's very good at all that as well. Like, there's quite a few options, and I don't know, I've just been thinking a lot recently about what their commentary team might look like, and it's hard to make predictions, and when I did look at them, I just kept coming up with worst case scenarios. Like, I just have a bad suspicion they're going to decide to give Craig McMillan a lot of money to be a big part of it, which he's not my favorite. I was hoping they'd go big on Mike Hesson. We've been reliably informed that Mike Hesson remains contracted to Sky. I got no idea what he's going to do with Sky, but that is a limitation. I wonder if, I don't know, I didn't really get an answer on this, but I wondered about, like, how much Sky have a saying in, like, because all their overseas stuff normally has a New Zealand broadcaster or something, same as we bring a foreign broadcaster or two over here. I assume that's like a, what would you call it? Like, one of those overseas student exchange type things. So I assume because Sky are broadcasting, like, back here, I figure they would then nominate someone, or maybe there's negotiations back and forth, I don't know. So maybe Mike Hesson will get to do a lot of that, like just get to travel around doing the away tours now, I don't know. But if I had to guess, I would say, like, if I had to put money on one person who I think will turn up on Spark Sport, I am going to go with Brendan McCullum. I think he's the guy that they would target first and foremost. And I think he'd be good too. I think he's done really well with his commentary so far. So he's the guy I'd be on if I had to bet on a person to definitely turn up in the Spark commentary box. It'd be Brendan McCullum.
It would take a bit of dosh. Because you look at what happened in Australia, like, all the guys were with 9.
They've got some, though.
I don't know if they've got the money to, like... They might have the money to get a Brendan McCullum, but you're not going to be able to...
They might not have it left, yeah.
They might not have the money to get a Brendan McCullum, Craig McMillan, and a Scott Styris, So all of whom, like McCullum and Styris, Simon Doull, all those dudes do work overseas as well. Like, Simon Doull does a lot of work with... I think it's like Cricket Express or something like that, and a lot of work in India. So Spark would have to compete with that kind of money, which I just don't know if they have. They probably
they wouldn't necessarily, though, because they don't clash. Like, the Black Caps can't be playing in 2 places at once, so unless they're trying to get exclusive deals with these guys, like Simon Doull presumably could do Spark in the summer and then do ICC, Cricket Express, all those other things, IPL, whatever, in the off-season of Sparks coverage, presumably. I mean, he does it already with Sky, doesn't he?
Yeah, but those dudes already have what appears to be, like, good relationships with some overseas broadcasters, and those overseas broadcasters might come to... Like, the overseas broadcaster might go straight to Simon Doull and be like, we need a guy talking about New Zealand cricket when New Zealand cricket is playing, when the Black Caps are playing. We need someone with local knowledge for fans in our country and our overseas viewers. Like, some of these dudes might get signed to ESPN Crick Info, and then they appear on the Crick Info video content. So it's not necessarily like they commentating. You know, it's not necessarily like going head to head commentating, but it is. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know if the situation now helps or hurts. You know, the possibilities of what Spark wanted to do with their coverage and stuff like that. Very, very interesting to obviously wait and see what happens there. But you brought up Radio Sport. Are they? You seemed optimistic that in some way, shape, or form, like Radio Sport will still exist. Like I thought they were stopping that exclusive of the pandemic. I thought that was like a general business decision from NZME to just cut Radio Sport. But you seem to think that Radio Sport will still exist in some way, shape, or form?
I mean, like, I don't think it could be completely exclusive of the pandemic. There's, without a doubt, like, it's been exacerbated by the pandemic, but without a doubt, this was probably something they'd thought of for a while beforehand. Like, it's, both those things are probably true.
Well, I thought they made the decision to cut it, like, months ago.
No, because didn't it just go off air? Like, just randomly it was on and then it wasn't, and it was kind of a sudden thing?
No, but there was news. There was Radio Sport will.
Well, if there was, I don't remember it.
Cease to exist, and then there's social media and stuff to spread. Oh, yeah, maybe I'm misreading. Like, obviously, I don't really care too much what Radio Sport's up to.
Yeah. When I say optimistically about them coming back, I should also say that that's me saying this without any stakes in the game. Like, I don't. I think the New Zealand sports media landscape is better for having a Radio Sport, but I don't actually listen to it personally, so it doesn't affect me if it's not there. So, like, me saying that isn't, like, necessarily, I mean, it's a no-loss situation for me, not in that I win either way, but just in that I'm not particularly affected if it doesn't come back, so I don't particularly care if I get that prediction wrong. So maybe I'm being a little, like, fast and loose by saying that, but I kind of suspect there's a lot of... And also, there's clearly a market for it, because it existed for a long time. The fact that they didn't find a good way to maintain that, and walk such a precarious balance that a month off has, like, plummeted them into... death and despair, like, that's not a good sign, but I don't know, I think that's more of a, who are we talking here? Is it MediaWorks? No, it's not, it's, Radio Network. I think that's more of them not being able to, like...
NZME.
Yeah, which is further up the branch. That's more them not being able to capitalize on that than it not being a viable thing in and of itself. So, I mean, maybe it won't turn up under their thing, but maybe someone will create a new channel called Sport Radio, and it'll be on MediaWorks or something like that. Or maybe Spark will do something. I don't know. Like, I suspect that place in the market, like that hole in the market, will be filled. Or maybe Trackside Radio just, like, up their game even more so. They've actually done a bit better recently, so... Like, I don't know. But at this point, I would bet on it being more likely to come back than not, in some way, shape, or form.
Rightio. We've talked enough about that shit. Let's parlay our way into a bit of a discussion around the spinners in Aotearoa, because today I wrote my first of two State of Spin thingies. I focused on the Auckland Aces, Northern Districts Knights, and Central Districts, and then tomorrow I will write about the Wellington Firebirds, Canterbury, and Otago Volts. And it's just my intention is just to lay out these teams' spinner situations and then assess like any trends that are present in domestic cricket around Aotearoa with the spinners. The main thing I'm I haven't written about the Wellington Firebirds in Canterbury and Otago Volta yet, but I know their spinner situation. And the main thing that sticks out to me is like where all the spinners are at in their careers. So, like the youngest frontline spinner, not necessarily youngest, but the least experienced, least known of the Stags, Knights, and Aces, to my knowledge, is Joseph Walker, who plays for the Knights. If Ish Sodhi or Mitchell Santner's back and available for the Knights, then Joseph Walker drops out. If Santner and Sodhi are on Black Caps duty, Walker comes in. And this year, Walker had the best summer of his career. He's an off spinner, but he's played, 5-6 years of domestic cricket. So he's not necessarily a spin prospect, but he is the youngest or the least experienced spinner of those three teams, like notable spinners. Auckland Aces have Lewis Delport in a situation with Will Somerville. And then the Stags are led by Ajaz Patel, and you get a couple of overs from like guys like Brad Schmullian, George Worker. Auckland Aces do rely on Glenn Phillips, Jeet Raval, Mark Chapman to bowl some spin as well. But there's, across Aotearoa, across all the teams, there isn't like a wave of spinners coming through, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because the talent is a bit further along. So like Ajaz Patel's the best test spinner. He's the test spinner right now. That's fine. Mitchell Santner and Ish Sodhi, the white ball spinners. That's fine. Like Auckland have Will Somerville and the experience, like holistically speaking, of Lewis Delport. So to me, my assessment is the spin talent in Aotearoa is just further along their careers, but there is a lack of like interesting, funky, wow, who's that exciting dude? I do know Canterbury have Theo Van Workom, who is, I think he's a lefty, similar to Ajaz Patel. Blake Coburn hasn't really kicked on with his lefty leggies, which is like the holy shit X-Factor spinner. Aotearoa doesn't really have any holy shit X-Factor spinners. And then there's like an abundance of part-time spinners across all the teams. So that's one over in Trent. I was just thinking about Walker, and he didn't play an excessive amount of domestic cricket this summer because Mitchell Santner was dropped from the test team and Ish Sodhi isn't in the test team contention. So for Northern Districts moving forward, if neither Mitchell Santner or Ish Sodhi aren't playing test cricket, which seems like a very realistic possibility in the next 18 months, suddenly Joseph Walker's not going to be playing cricket for the Knights because those dudes are going to be more available more often. So it puts him in a weird little scenario where his pathway and development's blocked. And I think there's a couple of those situations where, because the talent, the top tier talent, the spin talent in Aotearoa is a bit further down their careers, and then we have this weird abundance of part-time all-rounders, batsmen who bowl spin, all the little cracks and nooks and crannies where a young spinner could get in, they're all kind of clogged up at the moment. And again, it's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. That's just how I observe the spin situation, the state of spin in Aotearoa, without any real like judgment placed on it.
So the cool thing about all that is it kind of coincides, like your little exploration there coincides with the fact that I've just written a thing looking at home versus away performances in Test cricket, and I'm currently writing a thing looking specifically, like leading on from the end of that one, into looking how spinners have performed in Test cricket in New Zealand conditions throughout history, because of an obvious trend that came from the home and away thing, which is that, generally speaking, and there's exceptions to every rule, Dion Nash was one who did quite well, Asimo did quite well away, but for the most part, like, all the good seamers in New Zealand conditions did very well, and did very well here. did worse overseas. So to various different degrees. Like Shane Bond, for example, an outstandingly good bowler in overseas conditions, even better in New Zealand conditions. Like his test average was, I don't have it on me right now, but it was something like, not like 19s in New Zealand and 25 or something like that away, balancing out somewhere in the middle at around 22, something like that. So, like, that's kind of your average baseline for the seamers. Some are absolutely extreme, like Jacob Warren was beyond like mind blown to look at how he was like a world class seam bowler in New Zealand conditions and absolutely disastrous whenever he went away. Daryl Tuffy as well, same mold, very expected, very unsurprising those fellas. Kyle Mills, same boat, and also there's a kind of generational thing there of those guys all playing at the same time, and I wonder, also crossing over with Stephen Fleming, who was the same on the batting side of things, to the opposite degree. Like, he was terrible batting, and New Zealand, I think he averaged 33s, in New Zealand, averaged 48 or something away from New Zealand, with I think 3 triple centuries away from New Zealand as well. So there seems to be a little bit of a relation between that, and maybe it's just a bit of the era, that time. But when you look at the spinning numbers, it's the opposite. It's all Fleming-esque, which spinners, I mean, it's completely expected when you think about the grassy wickets that are allowing those seamers to take, to be so much more effective in New Zealand at the same kind of conditions, which are stopping the spinners from doing well. Plus, there's obviously a more direct relationship between the two, which is that Daniel Vettori couldn't take so many wickets playing in New Zealand if the top order's being ripped apart by the seam bowlers every time anyway. They're taking all the wickets, there's only 10 wickets per innings. Vittori's coming in and getting 1 for 40 from 20 overs or something like that, and that's over a test, that's all he's getting to feast upon, But generally speaking, yeah, with spinners, that was the opposite trend. Seamers do better in New Zealand, do worse overseas. Spinners do worse in New Zealand, do better overseas. So I've been sort of looking at different, I haven't got very deep into it yet, so where I can give answers to these things, but because of what I had from that home and away looky majiggy thing, I've got the working hypothesis, which I'll throw out now and put it on the record to see if it comes true when I actually start digging into it more. Working hypothesis being, well, there's a couple, because one, when I looked at the whole how spinners in general have performed in New Zealand, guys like Shane Warne, Matthias Muralitharan, they didn't have any problems. Murali, 30 wickets at 19.96. Shane Warne, 49 wickets at 21.30. Those are world-class numbers in a country where our own domestic spinners tend to struggle. Daniel Vettori's numbers were something like 38s in New Zealand and 31s overseas, somewhere in that range. It doesn't seem like the world-class spinners ever had a problem bowling in New Zealand conditions, whereas ours have, which suggests that perhaps we just don't produce very good spinners. The other aspect is that those guys like Warne and Murali got to come here and bowl 2 New Zealand batsmen who traditionally aren't so great against spin anyway, probably because we don't face a whole lot of it domestically, because we don't produce that many good ones, because the conditions aren't conducive, and there's this whole mixed up cause and effects thing with all this. But that's sort of what I'm trying to look into and explore and figure out if I can find some patterns with that, because my working hypothesis is that it's not just about conditions. I think we also just don't produce many good spinners, and again, cause and effect, it goes both ways. We don't produce them because the conditions are bad, but because the conditions are bad, the ones we produce aren't as good as they could have been. Then we don't trust them, we don't bowl them that well. Seeing bowlers do well here, so they get the priority. There's all these little things where everyone's kind of snapping at each other's heels, but that's kind of where I'm going with that one, and we'll see how that comes out in the wash once I've actually written and researched it. But yeah, might be a little bit of a focus on spin bowling over the next few days on the website.
Which is when you put it in the context of that argument, where everyone uses the stats that says spin hasn't taken a wicket in New Zealand for like X amount of overs for 25 billion years. We only like spinners. I Murali and Shane Warne obviously absolute monsters, but their records are aligned with them being monsters. Like, it's not like they averaged 30 in New Zealand. They literally dominated from those stats that you're saying. So, like, yes, they were world class, but they also fucking dominated in Aotearoa, regardless of the conditions. Now, obviously, completely different time periods, but it does make you wonder, like, New Zealand is seen as a seam paradise, and I'm trying to rack my brain around like international teams and think of who the best spinners are and whether we've seen them in Aotearoa recently, because most teams, I think a lot of teams fall into the trap of doing what the Black Caps do. So they look at those stats and they see, well, spin doesn't take any wickets and the Black Caps aren't playing a spinner for this game, so what's the point of us having a spinner? But there is that idea, and it's something that I have actually talked about a lot. Like Shane Warne loved bowling in Australia because of bounce, and there are other attributes that you can gain off pitches in New Zealand if you are good enough at spin bowling and you do have the tools. Some things can be hugely beneficial. Like Ish Sodhi and Mitchell Santner are both taller lads. I think they're both over 6 foot. So they're both going to benefit from the bounce. And I wouldn't necessarily then, even Will Somerville's a monster. And it's like, well, we're going to spin conditions, which are generally perceived, like spin conditions is a translation for low and slow. So bounce isn't really a factor, but when you come to Australia, you come to New Zealand, bounce becomes a factor, and that's why spin bowling is so difficult in Australia, because of bounce and because of the conditions in which you are bowling, regardless. So I do wonder if teams, they may underutilize spin, but then again, are there any spinners in the world who would come to New Zealand in Shane Warne Murali fashion and rip us apart? Like, I don't know if that spinner exists in the world at the moment. You can chuck up any names here, Wildcard, if you do have a true world class spinner who might do that. But there's definitely no one like that in Aotearoa, and that's a direct product of the role of the spinner in Aotearoa conditions, because your job is to be accurate and build pressure, which isn't conducive to developing funky X-factor spinners who can rip a team apart. Like, Aotearoa hasn't had a spinner who can rip a team apart for my lifetime. Like, even Daniel Vettori, as good as he wasn't that good. Like, he's like, we hear about Daniel Vettori's...
A different kind of good.
Yeah, flight, control, guile, change of pace, change of tempo. Funnily enough, in a similar way that that the analysis around Tim Southey is, like, there's so much nuance in what they're doing that you have to be a cricket nerd to really understand what makes them effective and why they are viewed in that realm. But there's just no... I think the funk has just gone out of the spin, and that's not just in New Zealand, that's in the world. Like, there's less of those really dominant spinners. There is that leg spin kind of revolution, but that's more tuned into T20 cricket. So it is interesting times. I don't know where you want to jump off from that, but yeah.
Well, the best test spinner of the last decade is Ravi Ashwin, and he's notoriously like I am not going to look it up because I know this to be true. I can't be bothered typing in the whole thing, but like, he's notoriously way better in India than he is outside of India. So like, that's probably part of it too. I mean,
just because they were recently here, I think Ashwin played the first test and then Jadeja got the nod, and Jadeja looked like the man.
Yeah, well,
bowling, like Jadeja was the man in the field, but then he was bowling pretty well. And it's like, well, shit, what happened to, I know Ashwin's been in and out of that Indian lineup in recent years. But yeah, we did see India very recently change between Ashwin and Jadeja, I think, mid-test series.
And that coincides with the whole, you think Indian cricket bowling, you think spinning, you know, it's not even something you think of Ashwin in recent times. You go back to Anil Kumble, guys like that, but and then often they've got that one guy who can a Zahir Khan or someone like that, who, by the way, also very successful when he played in New Zealand. He was I think he's on the top 10 list of wicket takers by overseas players, although he probably played quite a few games because he was around well. But guys like that. Whereas now, over the last couple years, you could almost, in fact, I don't even think it's almost, I think you can honestly say, certainly in shorter form stuff where Jasprit Bumrah's the best dude in the world at bowling at the death, but that seam attack for India is borderline I think that's the strength of their bowling attack now in a way which it hasn't normally been in the past, and that's probably a trend around the world because England have been trying to find a new spinner since Graham Swan retired. Still not really getting anywhere with that one. Jack Leach seems to be a better night watchman than anything else. South Africa are going through a transition post Imran Tahir kind of thing. They got that Maharaj dude, who's alright, but not just there doesn't seem to be Sri Lanka obviously, when Murali retired they had Rangan Herath and now he's gone, they're sort of scraping to find something else. Pakistan are alright, but other than that, there just doesn't seem to be very many dominant spinners anyway. Arguably the best spinner in the world is Rashid Khan, and how many tests have Afghanistan played? There's one? Their entire existence? I don't know. That does seem to be a global trend, and that's another thing I want to look at is how this has affected more recently. Because I think this might be a world cricket thing as well as a New Zealand cricket thing, but and this was also looking at the way all these things work. The battle between bat and ball, it always goes up one decade, down the next decade, it just swings and ups and downs and all this natural trends. But I did get as far as looking at grounds in New Zealand to see which grounds have traditionally had the best success for spinners. And it's quite funny because my idea coming into it was that it'd probably be Seddon Park, because Seddon Park's the one where often they'll pick an extra spinner, or maybe it'll be just a little bit of a drier wicket or whatever, I don't know. But at Seddon Park, spinners over, where are we, 26 test matches between 1991 and 2019, spinners have averaged 42.34 at Seddon Park, which is almost 10 runs worse than Eden Park, which is 33.37. I'll ask you to guess what the only two test grounds in New Zealand of the there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that have been used all time. What are the only two that have better spinning records? And it's not even close. They're both more than 5 runs better off than Eden Park. The only two that have better records for spin than Eden Park.
I'd say the Basin Reserve's got to be one. I was looking for some instant
you'd be wrong.
feedback.
Basin Reserve averaging 39.03 spinners there. Any additional guesses?
So not Basin Reserve. Surely Hagley and University Oval?
University Oval is quite a good guess. Hagley is not. Hagley Oval... Actually, well, I'll say that it's not a good guess, but it's also a great guess in a funny way. Hagley Oval has hosted 7 test matches, and spinners have taken 21 wickets in those 7 test matches at an average of 56.28, an economy rate of 3.41. So spinners have done absolutely terrible in Hagley Oval. But the reason it's quite a good guess is because the best ground for spin in the history of Test cricket in New Zealand is actually AMI Stadium in Christchurch, which doesn't exist anymore and hasn't had a test match since 2006. Spinners averaging 28.17 there. The second one is Carisbrook, which also doesn't exist anymore. Hasn't had a test match since 1997. They had 10 matches where spinners took 91 wickets at 28.34. So it's kind of I don't know if this is just that, like, the grounds that have replaced them have been kind of more modern, half-assy, kind of like, what would you call it? Well, that's not even really the case though with Hagley Oval and University. It's not like you can say those are drop-in pitches that are, really just rugby fields and all the stuff you'd say about Eden Park. But Eden Park, spinners have done all right there. And University Oval spinners do okay there. If you say Eden Park isn't really a test, well, they've had a test more recently than University Oval, though. I don't know. But I don't know what it is, because you wouldn't think that Christchurch will go from having the best ground for spin to having far and away the worst ground for spin, but like that's what's happened. So my only guess for why that could happen, because surely you can't just be like that drastic accidentally. It must just be that, like, tying in with that trend of more recently in the last 5 years or so, spinners have been worse, and maybe they haven't had a tour from a dominant spinner because there just aren't very many of them around the world. I don't know, but it's like drastic, the difference between those two.
Which isn't like overly surprising when I think about, because this summer I've thought like a lot about the Black Caps, but I also have. Well, it goes back to the summer before, 2018-19, because that's when I started to view the spin situation in Aotearoa as being, I don't want to say it's like good or bad, it's just weird in the sense that we had like 5 spinners who were all pretty good, and at that time I do remember doing a massive like deep dive into their stats, and I came to the conclusion that they're all the same because I could point to this stat and say this guy is better, or I could point to that stat and say that guy is better. I could say this guy has done this in the Punker Shield, that guy did that in the Ford Trophy. And the spinners I'm talking about are Mitchell Santner, Ish Sodhi, Ajaz Patel, Todd Astle, and Will Somerville. Like, they were all doing good things in different ways that it just made them all the same. And I settled on a perspective where personally, any conclusion I came to regarding the best spinner in Aotearoa was strictly based on my personal bias and I couldn't, what's different is like we're in the business of sharing our bias and sharing our opinion, but what was different was I felt bad picking and choosing different stats to make the case for one spinner when the same thing could be done for any of those spinners. So I instead was like, we've got like 4 or 5 spinners who are all fairly similar, not in how they bowl, but in their performances and their output. Not necessarily fantastic, but all fairly solid. And who you think the best spinner is going to come down to your personal bias. Like, that's how crazy it was. We had like 4 or 5 spinners who were all okay, and you could make the case that like whoever was selected in the Black Caps, that was due to like some personal bias and favoritism and just stuff like that, because they're all pretty similar. And now, as part of the 3-part thing I did about the summer of transition and transformation, we've lost 2 spinners. Todd Astle retired in red ball cricket, and Will Somerville got injured for Auckland. One of the most interesting cricket narratives to keep an eye on over the next 12 months is whether Will Somerville goes back to being the automatic top dog with Auckland Aces, or if Lewis Delport can keep Will Somerville out of the Auckland Aces team, because that would be crazy for Will Somerville. So now we've just got Ajaz Patel, Ish Sodhi, and Mitchell Santner. And throughout that time period, like, Ish Sodhi came onto the scene for the Black Caps, like, off the top of my head, around 2013, similar time frame for Mitchell Santner. Ajaz Patel and Will Somerville were a bit more recent. Todd Astle got sporadic opportunities over the same similar-ish time period. Obviously, he was around a lot longer. But so you're using a post I think AMI Stadium's the new one, actually. I think it was Jade Stadium. We're not from Canterbury. So.
It's the same one, isn't it? They just sold the sponsorship to someone else. But yeah, Jade Stadium is what it is more.
No, because AMI is the new stadium.
I don't know. I'm just going off what Cricinfo says.
Well, they don't know shit about Canterbury.
Well, AMI probably just moved their sponsorship onto the new one as well.
Yeah, well, we know it as Jade Stadium. That's what we.
Right, wouldn't you? If the one, colloquially known as Jade Stadium. That is when I think of Nathan Astor, I think Jade Stadium.
Yeah. So you're talking about so Jade Stadium and Carisbrook were fantastic for spinners, which is weird because we think the south of Aotearoa, we think juicy, we think moisture, overcast, and we think seam bowling. So a post Jade Stadium and Carisbrook era, we've got the Hagley Oval, University Oval in Dunedin. It's not perfect, but it's a similar time frame to like a post Daniel Vittori era. And you could make a strong argument that the spinners post Daniel Vittori have been pretty shit. Like, there were Jiten Patel had moments. Guys like Bruce Martin got opportunities. But there's, we do have... Mark Craig came and went. These guys are serviceable test bowlers. Like Ajaz Patel does a good job test cricket. Will Somerville's been good in test cricket. Ish Sodhi's been good in T20s. Mitchell Santner's good in T20 and ODI cricket. So they're all, again, different, they're all fairly even with different guys spiking in different formats at different times. What I ultimately I think I'm trying to say is that none of those dudes has made the spot their own. None of the dudes has broken free of the group and said, yo, I'm the motherfucking best spinner in Aotearoa. Here's why. Watch and learn. No one's done that. And in Aotearoa, we don't see any spinners doing well. We don't really see spinners performing at a high level based on all those numbers you mentioned with grounds, the numbers of seam wickets versus spin wickets. So it is to me, it's fucking my mind's hurting right now because there's so many variables and so many different things at play, and you start to wonder is it a case of because we've talked about this, the seam bowlers being too good where the spinner doesn't need to do anything, but then again we've had 5 different spinners come and go in and out. So no spinners really decided to dominate those games either. So it's hard to pinpoint anything. I think a lot of people look at the recent stats and they're just well, don't play a spinner. Well, why don't we try and get a spinner who is good enough and develop a spinner to perform at a high level of the highest level of cricket? Let's make that as opposed to falling back on being spinners don't take wickets, so we're just going to pick seamers and that's it. Because in the stuff that I've looked through yesterday and today, that might seep into domestic cricket as well, where no one wants to be a spinner. So suddenly they've just got less and less spinners coming through, and you've got less and less of the spinners who excite people, like leg spinners and offies with lots of variety. Those don't exist in Aotearoa. We do have leg spinners, but our main leg spinner, Ish Sodhi, couldn't take his opportunity at Test cricket. So I do wonder what the effect of the lack of the purest form of funky spin with the Black Caps, what effect does that have at the lower levels in terms of developing spinners, or are we going to see now this whole weird wave of young spinners coming through who are got all sorts of varieties and heavily influenced by T20 cricket, but they can perform in Test cricket and long form cricket? It's all a bit of a interesting conundrum.
To an extent, we're already seeing that with the just proliferation of spinners in the Plunket Shield at the moment, and not just part-time spinners getting through a few overs, but part-time spinners legitimately taking wickets. So is, I mean, that's a trend which sure has to have come from like this kind of thing. Spinners aren't doing that well, so they're becoming undervalued. But at the same time, if spinners are undervalued now, then that means that now is the perfect time to be a young spinner coming up, throwing in your variations, really like working on your tools and figuring out like batsmen don't know how to play this right now. Like they're just not facing this kind of stuff. So now's the perfect time to be coming through as a spinner like that, which is like just that thing about everything going around in roundabouts and cycles like that. This is an unprovable theory, but while you're saying that, I was wondering, like, the other aspect of this is I wonder how much 2020 cricket has influenced this. And I wonder if the role of a spinner just in general, like worldwide cricket, tactically speaking, at international level, whether spinning overall has just pushed a bit too much towards that, like, from being the Shane Warne attacking, Murali attacking type bowler to being more like just a little too far in that way of containment. And I don't know how to prove that, but it feels like a sound enough theory to me, off the cuff. I was looking at the 7 test matches that have been played at Hagley Oval as well. Every single one of them has had a result, except for one, which was that which should have been a result, is when New Zealand batted all day. Speaking of spinners, Ish Sodhi with a glorious innings to hold on for a draw there against England a couple of years ago. Other than that, Australia beat us by 7 wickets once. New Zealand have won the other 5 matches that have been playing there, including a 423-run victory over Sri Lanka on Boxing Day 2018, if you remember that one. And the other is like won by 8 wickets, 7 wickets, 8 wickets, 9 wickets. 7. So they've all been comfortable results as well, which probably, I think, leans on, without looking into it any deeper, I think that probably leans on what you said about the thing about maybe the seam bowlers are just a little bit too good and they're just taking all the wickets. So, like, that, I mean, if that's part of it, then that's part of it. Like, you're not trying not to win test matches, and you want to, like, if you've got a 3-pronged bowling attack of Tim Southee, Trent Boult, and Neil Wagner, you're expecting them to take all the wickets, which does alter the role of your spinner. This does, like those stats before, include overseas spinners as well, so that's a factor as well. And if we smashed Sri Lanka, I'm in that test match by 423 runs, I'm assuming we also smashed their spinners all over the place, which probably affects it as well. But like, it's just a sort of interesting little time, I guess, to be a spinner in worldwide cricket for all of these reasons and more. It's just kind of like, I don't know, I just come back to that idea. I think spin bowling right now in world cricket is an undervalued tool.
The most interesting thing, I believe, is that looking at like Plunkett Shield numbers, as we've talked about a fair bit, is the part-time spinners. Because like we're saying, like, well, I'm saying like a lot of the best spinners in New Zealand just haven't quite been good enough in the last like 5 to 10 years. And that was actually evident in the Plunkett Shield last summer, because Mitchell Santner, Ish Sodhi, Todd Astle were all fairly mediocre in the Plunkett Shield, and Will Somerville was a non-factor, I believe. Like, let me just check old Will. Yeah, he was a non-factor, and he obviously got injured as well. But the best spinners in the Plunkett Shield were Lewis Dalport was the best, which might be a one-season wonder. Like, we've got to wait for 2-3 seasons. Ajaz Patel was pretty good. Like, he held on to his top spot. But then you've got guys like Glenn Phillips. You've got guys like Glenn Phillips averaged 24.8. Todd Astle averaged 53. Mitchell Santner averaged 57. Ish Sodhi averaged 80. Like, that's a huge disparity. Michael Bracewell averaged 22.10. And all these dudes are doing it with decent wickets, like 9, 10, 11, 12 wickets. Obviously, they're only playing like fucking 2 games, which is terrible, but it's what we get. But the point being that, like, we're at this weird point right now where the best spinners in Aotearoa haven't necessarily, the best spinners in terms of like Black Caps selection and Black Caps rankings haven't necessarily been the best spinners in Aotearoa in terms of performance. the best spinners in Aotearoa in terms of performance, other than Ajaz Patel and Lewis Dalport, are guys like Glenn Phillips, who's suddenly a spin bowler now, and Michael Bracewell, Michael Rippon for Otago as well. Those sorts of characters, like even someone like Cole McConchie, who didn't play a lot this summer, very nifty off-spinner, all-rounder, bats and bowls. Dean Foxcroft for the Otago Volts. Those type of dudes are proven to be highly effective in domestic cricket and Plunket Shield and Ford Trophy. Obviously, it goes without saying T20 cricket is better suited to those roles and those jobs. But yeah, it is a weird time when, having said of what we said, like, some of the best spinners in Aotearoa aren't actually the best spinners in Aotearoa like right now, which is just crazy.
And it's hard to think of how that can be the case. Like, is Glenn Phillips just a better bowler than Mitchell Santner? I doubt it. Like, I can't... I've seen them both play. I haven't seen Phillips bowl very often, but seen a lot of Mitchell Santner to know that he's a better bowler than his statistics tend to suggest. Like, why that is as well. Why it is that Mitchell Santner doesn't take enough wickets is its own thing as well. Like, but it surely had a lot to do with how they're used. Like, tactically, what time of like a captain's being a little too aggressive with the Black Caps guys. Like, these dudes can bowl 40 overs in a day between them, and like, if we'll get through these and they'll get a bunch of wickets for us, will be sweet as. Or is it like opposition batsmen just go easier on the part-timers and lose their wicket that way because the ball is actually spinning a bit more than they expected? I don't know, but like the theory goes, if it seems it spins, so... And you can argue you've seen that from the fact that the South Island things up until Hagley Oval recently seem to, and Basin Reserve as well, takes decent enough spin compared to other places. It's grounds like the Bay Oval last took 6 wickets at 50s, was the one where Mitchell Santner bowled all day against England to try get he got 3 for the night before and then bowled all day and didn't get a wicket, as we did eventually bowled through them to get the victory there. I think it was Neil Wagner coming to the rescue as per usual there. Seddon Park as well, not doing nearly as well of first spin as people would think, and like McLean Park obviously is just kind of like almost like a cliche in New Zealand cricket, where it's like we pick the spinners for the low slow ones, whereas arguably the spinners are like, it's not that spinning. I mean, if you're going to India where pitches are up and stuff like that and you got nice, like, dust everywhere, yeah, sure, your spinners are going to be just an outrageous weapon. But on a flat, like, road of a New Zealand wicket, which we often get sometimes in these ones, like, it's not that spin bowling becomes so much better in those conditions. It's just that seam bowling becomes harder as well, so everything's on a more level playing field. Really what you see in those kind of games is that batsmen just score heaps of runs, regardless of who's bowling. So I think there's also a big old, and it's got to be like heritage based as well to some degree, of that New Zealand's never, I don't think ever really had a spinner who could rip through a lineup. Therefore, we've never learnt how to bowl with those kinds of spinners, like how to use them, how to attack with spin, rather than using them as like the go-between while your seamers are having a rest so they can come back.
Yeah, definitely. Like, oh shit, to bed. I'd be far more attacking than some of the shit you see. But I'm not a cricket captain. Here's a little juicy little stat to leave us for our exit here, wildcard. Mitchell Santner. Everyone loves his first class bowling average. The highest of his bowling averages, a little bit higher than his test bowling average. First class bowling average of 47. Now, that is considerably worse than Michael Bracewell, who has a first-class bowling average of 29.10. Glenn Phillips, battling, but better than Mitchell Santner. He's got a first-class bowling average of 40.80. So, now let me just check here. First-class batting average of 28 for Mitchell Santner, first-class bowling average of 47. 28 and 47. Michael Bracewell, batting average 33, bowling average 29. So he's a better all-rounder than Mitchell Santner in first-class cricket.
Yeah, he's passed the all-rounder test of the higher batting average.
Yeah, and then Glenn Phillips averaging 39.62, in first class cricket with that bowling average of 40.8. So there's two dudes who are better batsmen and better bowlers than Mitchell Santner in first class cricket, not even test cricket. Wow's a wild card. Righty. Wrap it up there, eh? We'll drop our next email newsletter on Friday, probably. We'll be back next week for another podcast. As long as not much is happening, we're just settling into that one podcast a week groove. They are a bit longer, so that's cool. Jump on Patreon, support us on Patreon if you can. And stay tuned. I've got my second part to the State of Spin. And then Wildcard has teased a little thingy-majig about
it won't be little.
Spin bowlers coming to Aotearoa and overseas bowling and bowling in Aotearoa. So stay tuned for that. Plenty of spin for the Niche Coast over the next few days. Otherwise, get out there, enjoy the sunshine. So kia kaha, stay beautiful. Ch-ch-ch-ch-ch.